that brings us to the news, starting with one of the bigger stories in TNA history. TNA signed Kurt Angle.
So, this Kurt Angle guy.
Kurt Angle in 2006, in particular.
Yeah, by all accounts,
Yes.
before this had happened,
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Angle not exactly in the best place.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in more detail, but there is a reason he left WWE.
And left is a curious term.
Yeah, was kind of fired, kind of left, kind of mostly fired. I don't know.
But I guess, so I imagine your first Kurt memory was this in TNA. Like your first TNA Kurt memory. You were like watching at the time.
I wasn't. Kurt was arguably my route in between the best of the... Because like, I started watching right after this.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I started watching TNA regularly in November 2006. So the first show I actually watched that I remember sitting as, like, watching Impact Weekly was Kurt's first match. It was the Abyss match on TV. So Kurt is, like my defining Kurt memory is right after this, with him coming. Obviously, I would have watched Kurt in the World Wrestling Federation, so it's not like my first introduction to Kurt in general. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, we are hitting the period where I started watching TNA on a weekly basis.
Well, let me tell you whose first knowledge to Kurt Angle was TNA.
Was it actually?
The first time I'd ever seen Kurt Angle wrestle like live on TV was TNA.
I guess, yeah, you would have been just a little too young to see him in WWE, wouldn't you?
I had seen him on DVDs.
Yeah.
But he was not on WWE TV when I was watching WWE TV.
So that's yeah, he's a TNA guy to you then.
Yeah, he is.
I don't think he is kind of a TNA guy.
He is. Well, wasn't he there longer?
I think with the second run, it might have tipped it back in favor of WWE.
Boo. So 2 years versus 8 years the first run. And then, how long was he there the second run?
Yeah, TNA was, what, just 9.5 years?
Yeah. And then he went back to WWE for 1 year. I think he's still technically a TNA guy, if you don't count like sporadic appearances since then.
TNA.
Technically, as a full-time pro wrestler / on-screen character, I think he was in TNA longer.
So were you more in, like, what did you feel when you first started watching Kurt in TNA?
I was like, I know this guy from my WWE DVDs.
Nice.
I always thought he was a really good character. It was always his character work that I enjoyed because I was a kid and wrestling was dumb, but hit the music.
The thing with Kurt, where like he has like the again, like all people, the reputation of being a wrestler, and he is so much more than that. He is such a well-rounded performer.
Kurt was also like the thing I tried to use to get people to watch TNA in like grade
that's
3.
fun.
I was like, you know, Kurt's there now.
And did that work?
You know what's funny? Though I had a conversation with one of my friends, and he ended up giving me one of my other friends ended up giving me all of his brother's wrestling DVDs, which was great. But my other friend, we made a trade, and I gave him my 3-disc Best of DX, and he gave me bloodiest ECW matches, which is already a win, and the 3-disc RVD set.
You won out on that. You fleeced that person.
I fleeced that one. But I remember like being like, oh, you know, because this is when I first started watching TNA. Famously, my first TNA moment, The Abyss, Stevie Richards, Raven segment.
The Fireball.
Mm-hmm. And I was like trying to like sell people on TNA, like, oh, have you guys ever watched this? I know like wrestling was still like a thing that was cool to talk about because I was 12 or whatever. Then I had to hide it for a decade. And they were like, you know, I tried to watch TNA. It's too much talking.
Really?
Too much talking was their takeaway.
Which I guess is probably true because it was like Russo's TNA at that point.
Mm.
But also, it's very true of WWE at that point too.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know.
I don't know. I guess like just it's more forgiving, I guess.
Because when I was in like when I was like this period when I was starting to watch TNA, I would have been in secondary school. I would have been in my teens. I would have been like 14. So most of my friends had nearly all of my friends. I didn't have many friends that stayed wrestling fans in their teens. I had a decent few who were wrestling fans when they were kids. So only one person that I ever like come close to converting to TNA with shout out Jack Casey, who I gave a bunch of TNA DVDs to. I'm not sure if he watched them, but he eventually returned them. So he at least had the interest to take some DVDs off me once. But that's the closest I ever got to like convincing somebody to watch TNA in my childhood.
Yeah. There was like 1 year where wrestling was cool to talk about.
Which year?
I think it was grade 3, so when I was 11, so do the math. Like 2009, I guess.
Yeah, Jeff Hardy? Was it just because of Jeff Hardy?
Mate, I know, because like Batista and Cena and Triple H were the fan favorites of the era for people.
And I guess that is like the first period of like the PG era, so it makes sense that suddenly that exploded into like 11-year-olds.
Yeah. And then I also had the famous like debate where like I was a kid that would like often back down in like in conversations and be like, well, I guess I'm wrong. But there's one time my friend was convinced that Kurt Angle's name was Kurt Angle.
What?
Like K-U-R Tangle.
No.
And I would not, and I fought to the death over this. I was like, his name is not Kurt Angle, you dumb fuck.
Kurt Angle. Good lord.
And he's like, yeah, because he tangles him up. I remember this conversation vividly from when I was 10.
Did you win?
I mean, of course I was right.
Maybe that guy's right. Maybe that like the Berenstein Bears thing, where in his world it was Kurt Angle.
It's not Kurt Angle. But you know what? When he said, it's like it's the tangle lock. I was like, that actually does kind of make sense.
Because he tangles his ankle.
He tangles him up.
I remember growing up, my dad didn't believe Kurt Angle was actually an Olympic gold medalist.
He's like, it's a gimmick.
Yeah, he's like, that wrestling shit's fake. He's not an Olympic gold medalist. So we found like an encyclopedia that had like the Olympic winners. It went back to 1996. I was like, he's right there. He's actually an Olympic gold medalist.
Did he concede it?
He did. And that was back in the day when you couldn't just fucking Wikipedia it. You had to find a source for that shit. You couldn't just be like, look, the internet says it's true. You had to be like, I opened a CD-ROM encyclopedia that had the Olympic results on it, and I showed it to my dad to prove I was right.
Do you remember like parent faves?
Not really. Like because my dad he went to like a kind of a world of sports show once. He told me about this randomly. It's like, oh, I went to like a show that came to Cork, and like it had like Big Daddy on it. So like he see like a show.
This is almost bar for bar the exact same as my grandfather being like, oh yeah, I went to a show in Mildura once and Andre was on it.
So he wasn't much of a fan. Like he would do a bit where every time we would be watching it, he would walk past the room and just call it rubbish and move on.
My grandfather did the same thing, but then like famously, my grandmother would sell him out and tell me about how like when I wasn't there, he'd watch like Raw, and like his two guys were Sheamus and John Cena.
Yeah, that's a good two. So Kurt Angle coming to TNA.
It's very exciting.
TNA's website issued the following statement on September
1 warning.
It is a good warning for once as opposed to a bad one. It was a message from TNA President Dixie Carter to the TNA fans. This is a Dixie quote, so you do have to read it.
In the course of history,
oh no, Mauro.
There are defining moments that change the fabric of a company forever. I'm just Jim Cornette now, that's all I can do. These are moments that are spoken about for years, not days, and serve as benchmarks in the annals of company's growth. And on occasion, these moments transcend the individual company and rewrite the history of the industry. This Sunday at No Surrender pay-per-view, an announcement will be made that will do just that. You will not want to miss the No Surrender pay-per-view.
So how do you feel about the level of hype of that announcement?
I almost prefer that they didn't like advertise it super heavy. Like, and also they're probably still working out details, you know.
Which is funny. Like this statement was put on the website. The pay-per-view. Let me get the date. I think it's the 24th. 24th is the pay-per-view. And never once on the TNA wrestling television show Impact did they mention this.
But like, I get it because by all accounts, like 4 people knew.
Yeah, they wanted to keep a tight lid. The more you teased it, the more people would probably have to come into it. But like, there's a quote at this one that I included. Like, Dave Meltzer called this at one point the best held secret in his time in professional wrestling. Which, like, think of the ground that covers. That like,
you know who knew about it?
Who?
Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett, Super Dragon.
Why did Super Dragon tried to book him, didn't he?
He tried to book Kurt versus Danielson and had to be told by TNA that they couldn't do it.
before he was actually announced.
Before he was actually announced.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So they made this announcement. Dixie Carter has kept a tight lid on the actual announcement, and who actually knows other than Jeff Jarrett isn't clear. What is clear from the TNA website announcement is that something big will be revealed at No Surrender. The three main guesses among various sources is that TNA has signed Bill Goldberg, TNA has signed Kurt Angle, or TNA will be expanding to moving to a new primetime slot, or both.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, or well, half of the other one, because they were expanding, or they were moving to a primetime slot, but not expanding. Jim Cornette introduced at the end of TNA's No Surrender pay-per-view a video which featured Kurt Angle. He was said he was headed to TNA. That revealed the secret that TNA has been teasing for nearly a week through its website, on the pay-per-view pre-game show and during the pay-per-view itself. It is funny, you get in the pay-per-view itself, and then all of a sudden it's like, Mike is telling us big announcement, Jim Cornette is telling us big announcement. It's like, oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Dixie Carter said the surprise would change the course of the industry, and the signing of Angle does have that potential. Initial concerns centered around why TNA signed Angle when WWE had apparently determined he was too physically and emotionally at risk to employ anymore.
Okay, well, first of all, it's like, we know why. It's like,
Again,
the why isn't the question there. It is the should.
Yeah, like this is the company that had Jeff Hardy around for a year and a half when they probably shouldn't have, but his name is Jeff Hardy. And it's the exact same thing here. It's like, whatever you say about Kurt's physical, mental, emotional well-being, he's Kurt Angle.
John Cena could be smoking crack in the middle of the ring and they should still sign him.
Yep. After his hands frequently going numb during matches the past couple of years due to his neck problems, accumulated stress from life on the road and marital issues leading to erratic behavior, and a heavy usage of pain pills, WWE cut all ties with them, presumably only after failed attempts to get him to seek help for his issues. We'll talk about this more in a second, about exactly why he was available. We'll focus on the TNA stuff at first. Angle came to Nashville on the 20th of September, filmed secret vignettes in a local warehouse, and TNA did not even allow its regular television crew to film it, using a different crew, making them sign confidentiality papers and filming at midnight. The only thing that did get out is they hired several local independent wrestlers to set up a ring, paid them well, and made them sign confidentiality agreements, but none of them saw Angle, and they left confused, believing that nobody ever got into the ring they set up. Angle wrote a 6-page handwritten thank you letter to Dixie Carter that day, which apparently she was touched by, which Dave had this. I don't know where he got it from.
Probably from Kurt Angle.
Or Dixie. Angle's statement, handwritten on a hotel notepad in Nashville this past week after shooting his vignette, reads as follows. Being with TNA feels like I have finally found my home. I had fun in WWE at certain times, but I was never really happy. Now being part of TNA, I know I have a purpose. I feel like I am part of history, part of a company that is not only on the rise, not only going to be the #1 watched wrestling show in the world within a short period of time, but TNA gives me an opportunity to spread my wings. The company has no limits to where it can go. The sky is the limit, and the main reason is because they brought the real back into wrestling, and that is the perfect fit for the greatest wrestler in the US Olympic history. I have room to grow here and to help TNA grow. Working for these caring and very giving employers of TNA makes me feel like I have a purpose and that sky is the limit. I don't feel trapped or held back like I did the first 6 years of my tenure with the other company. They held me back. Now our wonderful audience will see the real Kurt Angle doing what I love to do, real wrestling. And that's what puts a smile on my face each time I come to work. I even smile when I think about it. TNA will be the most watched television show on cable television. It's only a matter of time. Now I get the opportunity and privilege of being part of it. Thank you, TNA, for saving my career, my life, and my desire to do what I love. I will be here in some capacity for the rest of my life. That's real. Huh? That's damn real. He gave it 10 years. Like, he gave it a fair whack.
Yeah.
If he said that, then he's gone and if he's like Christian, if he had like a Christian run, it's like I would be like fuck you. But he gave it a fair whack.
Yeah. It's a great attitude to go into a company with.
If you are Dixie Carter and you do read that, you are like fuck yeah.
Yeah. Like if I'm Tony Carter, like I want Miro to send me this shit the day that he shows up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, you are in, you want to take this to the next level. This is a meaningful thing to you. You're not just cashing a paycheck because you got fired by the other place.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Dixie Carter said this week that TNA is a family organization that puts the health of its workers first. That will be tested if it appears Angle needs help or treatment, but he's booked for a major pay-per-view match. TNA sources say it's obvious the company is taking a risk, but they are taking Angle at his word that he's fine and plan to take steps to get medical clearance from doctors before he participates. It's possible TNA already had a physician of their own choosing evaluate him because the situation is sensitive and because the signing was kept secret until Sunday. Few details are known at this point. TNA sources say that Angle does plan to make himself available to the media very soon to address many of the questions fans and media have about his health and whether by supporting TNA they are guilty of taking part in putting him in a dangerous position. The circle of people who knew about Angle ahead of time consisted of Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett, Dave Sahadi, Sting, TNA's CFO, a couple of Spike TV officials, and maybe talent director Terry Taylor, but Taylor was not the one that did negotiations. Apparently this was negotiated directly with Dixie herself. TNA has what is described as an exclusive relationship with Angle, with the caveat, I believe, that he is able to do MMA if he wants to. Because that was like the big thing as well at the time, that like there was a lot of speculation that Kurt would go to the UFC.
He would have died.
He would have died. I'll talk about this in a sec, but like one of the reactions from within WWE is that while they would prefer not to see him with the competition, they would also prefer him in TNA than going to UFC.
Yeah. I mean, like, 1999 Kurt Angle? Sure. But, like, Kurt Angle now? No. He would die.
No. Yeah, like, keeping Terry Taylor out of negotiations was, like, that was how concerned Dixie was with keeping this secret. TNA has not released details of his contract other than indications he is part of its long-term plans. Many booking ideas are being bandied about within the company, hoping that Angle is able to perform reliably and safely for months, if not years to come. Which he broadly was. There are periods where Kurt's pretty rough.
Yeah, there's a whole different name for those periods.
But even during some of those periods, he's still the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah, like, that's the craziest thing is, like, even on, like, autopilot, the man is, like, one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, like that, and I don't think his entire career in TNA is on autopilot. I don't think the entire thing is like a drug-addled haze, but there are certainly periods of it that you can see, like you look into the man's eyes at times, and you're like, oh shit, oh no. But then there are others where it's like, he's Kurt Angle. He's just Kurt Angle. His enthusiasm with the product and the company has led to a morale boost, albeit guarded, among wrestlers and management. Angle watched No Surrender from home, but was on phone with Dixie Carter several times during the show, commenting on what he was seeing. I'm sure he loved the laxative angle.
Finally, they put the real back in real wrestling.
Yeah, Petey Williams is shitting his pants. His public statements released through TNA indicate he's gung-ho about trying to take TNA not just to the next level. Oh, so TNA probably released that full statement. Okay, that makes sense. And to help it become the top-rated wrestling show on cable. Angle clearly feels abandoned or wronged by WWE. Whether that's rational based on the circumstances does not matter when it comes to his motivation to help TNA improve its stature and profile. Sting met Kurt Angle for the first time last week when TNA filmed the Kurt Angle video in an empty warehouse with a wrestling ring setup. Sting was among the roughly half-dozen people who knew of Angle's pending arrival because he was also there to film footage of his costume. He underwent a makeover, but how extreme isn't being revealed by anybody at this point, because the idea is that like Sting is disappearing to train for Bound for Glory. We'll talk about that when we get to the stories on the show. Dave Sahadi, who was responsible for much of TNA's highly praised video production work, filmed the Angle vignettes.
Dave Sahadi, the GOAT.
Yeah, it's a very simple vignette. It is like literally Kurt Angle is appearing on screen doing like dropping to a knee and other such wrestling motions. As Barry Scott's like, he is the Olympic gold medalist. He is the world champion. Kurt Angle is coming to TNA. And then you just get Kurt with the it's real, it's damn real. Simple video, dropped at the end. It was fun that you didn't know that it was on the show.
No, because like I try to be like as in the dark as possible. Like I don't want to know this shit, you know.
Which was fun because like they were teasing at the end of the show. They made another announcement that we'll talk about in a second as well. But like, when they got there, it's like, does Liam know that this is Kurt? And then Kurt appeared on the screen. You're like, oh, Liam didn't know it was Kurt. That's fun.
Yeah, I don't know when, you know.
You can hear Liam's organic reaction to it on the watch along. Mike Tenay pushed in a production meeting the afternoon of the pay-per-view to find out more about the surprise announcement so he wouldn't be at risk of hurting his credibility by overhyping it. He was not given any hints and was told to do as he was asked and pushed the surprise as an industry-changing announcement. He was among several people who are usually plugged into what's going on who are upset or hurt that they weren't trusted. A number of wrestlers were also offended they weren't told, but once the secret was revealed on the video screen, they got over it pretty quickly and were excited about the potential, mixed with concern over his health. Most of us assumed it was the time slot change, said one TNA wrestler, so we weren't all that concerned during the show, figuring it wouldn't change our lives much. We were as surprised as anybody when that video aired.
That's good.
I think Mike Tenay does have like a little bit of a right to be like it is his job, like, to maintain that credibility. So I think it's fair that he is like, guys, I should know this. It's important for me to know this. But they at least in this instance didn't betray him. They didn't have him like August 1st warning it, being like, this is a thing that will change the face of wrestling and it be something shit. So at least like they didn't bury Mike that way.
It should have been Rampage.
In 2006?
Yeah.
Hell yes. Rampage and Joe. At Raw the next night in Oklahoma City, it was the only thing people were talking about. From backstage, it was said that not one person acted upset, betrayed, or angry about Angle going to TNA. Even office people made no negative comments about Angle going into the competition. Nobody was aware of his letter that was negative about the company at the time. So this was before the letter being like, I hated it there, they will be back, came out. So everyone was just hoping Angle would recognize his condition, and some were saying they hope he realizes the reality of the situation and environment he was getting into. If anything, the prevailing belief was tempered relief, because it was almost universally felt that this was better for him in the long run than going to UFC. And of course, like, there is a fundamental difference between working WWE at this point, which is television every single week and multiple house shows at the weekend, versus TNA, where Kurt would be at best working 5 dates a month.
Where he's wrestling 2.
And because it's a certain person's television these days, the TV matches aren't exactly going to be the most exacting on Kurt's body.
Yeah.
But also, like, the flip side that Dave mentions at one point, because, like, this is now the company hung on Kurt Angle, Kurt might feel the extra expectation that, like, he has to give those Kurt Angle performances more than he might have in WWE, where, like, the spread of that weight is across multiple shoulders rather than just Kurt's.
Yeah. He is the top guy.
Yeah, he is the guy. Like, when you build the guy coming in as, like, a thing that will change the industry forever, which it didn't, but I get why they hyped it that way, that's fine. That does put pressure on Kurt to change the industry forever.
Yeah.
So you might be asking yourself, fair listener, why exactly was Kurt Angle available?
Exactly. He's a pretty big star. How could WWE let this happen?
Yeah, one of WWE's top stars for the last 6 years on TV, but 8 years from when they signed him. Why is he gone? Why is he available? I don't know. WWE broke off ties earlier in September with Kurt Angle and granted him an unconditional release. They immediately announced the decision on WWE.com. Angle instantly became a free agent, able to sign with TNA, UFC, New Japan, 01, K1, and NASCAR if he wanted. I don't know why PW Torch listed all of those, but sure.
I guess they were all options.
The string of events that led up to the severing of ties on Friday is a complex web of problems in Angle's life, both personal and professional, which manifested into a situation WWE wanted no part of. WWE said that they would welcome him back, and they genuinely would, but only if he makes changes in his life and gets help for his abundance of problems. WWE's public comment on the situation initially was, due to personal issues, Kurt Angle has been granted an early release from his contract. WWE looks forward to establishing a new relationship with Kurt in the near future. The story then highlighted his great accomplishments in WWE. The next day, Angle granted WWE.com an interview saying, "My body is so beat up and run down, I can't even think straight," said Angle. "I need my body to re-heal and rehab. I have done this for too long without a break. I haven't been able to really enjoy my life. I haven't seen my family. I have had problems with medication. I'm just fried physically and mentally." Angle's business manager Dave Hawk was quoted in the story also. "Kurt's in a tremendous amount of pain," he said. "He's used prescription medication to deal with it. Kurt has come to the conclusion that unless he can get in the ring without the use of pain medication, that he doesn't need to be in there. He realizes he was just endangering himself and his opponents." Angle said he can't even think about returning until he heals up physically and mentally. Vince says, "When I'm ready, if I'm ever ready, to come back and just sign on the dotted line." Angle said, "I'll tell you, if I do return, I'm going to go back to my roots, training on the mat like my amateur days. Longevity is the key." Vince McMahon commented on the situation on Monday. He said, "It's unfortunate that Kurt was released, and it's really unfortunate for WWE fans who, for a while, won't see Angle in action. Angle is a consummate professional. Obviously, he's a great athlete, and he's the only Olympic gold medalist in WWE history. Not to have Kurt with us is really unfortunate all the way around, but circumstances were such that Kurt should have been and was granted his release. He goes on to talk about Kurt dealing with the pain, and so, like, you might think, Liam, hearing all of that it was WWE's thoughtful and generous concern about Kurt that caused him to be released.
That's the message I'm receiving from this PR.
Oh, this PR, you say? It's kind of crazy, this PR rollout that firmly affixes any responsibility to Kurt and has Kurt and his manager quoted being like, "This is all me, I'm a mess, WWE is fine, nothing to do with WWE, don't think about it, don't think about the wellness policy, don't think about Eddie Guerrero."
And when it comes down to it, it's like, how did Kurt hurt himself so much again? Well, what was he doing? Where?
Who allowed this man to constantly come back from, like, injuries before he should have?
Kurt. He made that call.
Yeah, he overruled Vince. He got in the office and is like, "Vince, I'm coming.
I have all the power."
Yeah, it's such like a transparent, like, PR rollout that they're like, it's really weird to see. Like this is the kind of thing they probably want, because like when Sasha and Naomi left, like, it was a PR hit job, you know? It was like they have taken food off the tables of the WWE wrestlers, and they've taken entertainment away from the WWE fans, and they betrayed the WWE universe. Like, it was discrediting them. Where this one, like, they got Kurt in, and it's just like, "Kurt, you're going to say this is all you, nothing to do with us, and we are thoughtful and kind for firing you." And, like, I don't fully blame WWE for doing that. They're protecting themselves from liability. That's what companies do. It's what companies will always do. But it's just really weird to look back on and be like, oh, they're thoughtful and concerning here, Liam. Thoughtful and concerning.
It also just feels like it's such a... It's, like, so weird and, like, something you would never see now. Like, to have, like, Kurt talk about it post-release, to have his manager talk about it, and to have, like, obviously Vince, but, like, to have WWE leadership also be quoted all in a story that they released is, like, so... Like, that's never gonna happen again. Because when people leave, they either get buried or, like, they're never mentioned ever again.
Yeah, it's silence. That's usually what you get. Well, like, Kurt's release, and you'll get Dave, or you'll get Wade, or you'll get Mike Johnson, or these days Sean Ross Sapp. They'll give you, like, the details about why this happened, and maybe some people speaking off the record on it. But yeah, to get, like, Kurt and his manager and Vince in a piece released on WWE.com going through all of this is very unusual. And, like, the thing that makes it stranger is, like, the defining message here is that, like, Kurt is stepping away, but he will come back. There is an open door for him to come back. If he solves his problems, he's still in the WWE family, and then he fucks off to TNA that month.
Yeah, it's wild.
Which is, I think, what made people, like, not really consider that it would be Kurt.
It's great build for his debut.
Yeah, because, like, Kurt Angle being released and TNA hyping a major announcement shortly after, people should have really put two and two together. And, like, obviously they did, because one of the things they speculated was that it would be Kurt. But, like, I think part of what made people think it wouldn't be is, like, all of this PR rollout. That it was just like, you know, Kurt will be back. He loves WWE. WWE loves him. They're so great together. It's just this little separation for a little while. And then Kurt goes to TNA for 10 years.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle posted a message to his fans on his personal website stating that he was eager to return to WWE someday and perform for his fans again. He didn't acknowledge the severity of his issues, only noting that he wanted to spend more time with the family he loves. He thanked the fans for their support. He said he wants to be the greatest ever and contended that he has an edge over the greats because he's more intense than all of them, which I love that. Guys, I'm the best. Listen, I'm the best. That's really important for you to know right now.
Yeah, like, these are all the questions that people must be asking me right now.
I'm the greatest wrestler. He wrote, "Injuries have always been a natural part of the business in my life, but where I have failed is not taking the time off to recover. When I'm off the mental stress, sitting back becomes worse than the physical pain. Something that tells my inner soul to go back regardless of condition." That's wrestlers for you. Like, no matter what the logic or the reason, if you're hurt, you can't do it. Like, their brains, or Kurt's phrase, their inner soul tells them to go back and work. It's just how they're wired. Back to Kurt. "The funny thing is, this obsession is what the industry loves, but this obsession can also be my destruction."
He's so aware that this is the worst thing for him.
Yeah, it's the toxic relationship wrestlers have with this industry. Like they can it is like Kurt is a person who dealt with addiction issues. You know, that's part of the thing we're talking about here is that he has to deal with pain medication to just get through all this. But like I feel like there is a certain addictive nature to pro wrestling itself, to like that pop and that reaction and that thing.
I mean, yeah, it's live performance.
And like these people can't let it go. Like they can't, for either health reasons in this case of Kurt here, or like just like coming out of retirement constantly, like if you're a Ric Flair or whoever, because you want that. Well, maybe Flair's financial reasons, but like people constantly wanting that one last run and that one last moment and that one more pop, and they're willing to do increasingly bad things for themselves physically, mentally, emotionally to get it. Kurt concludes, "Fans, thank you for all the memories. It was quite a ride. I would not trade any of it for the world. As I sit here a bit teary-eyed, I do want you all to know I will be fine. I will finally get to spend some real quality time with my family, time that is much, much overdue. My plan and goal is to become stronger mentally, physically, and spiritually. I, Kurt Angle, will be back." That's a promise, and that's damn true. Not real, though. Vince, if you happen to read this, I want again to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are a great man. When we get together, the next cup of coffee is on me. Perhaps PW Torch says, most concerning, though, was the line early on that said, "I know in my heart that I have not reached my peak." So, like, there was a lot of concern that TNA was enabling Kurt Angle.
Well, they are.
Which they are.
Well, the reason they have that concern is because they are.
This man is a physical and emotional wreck, so much so that WWE have to cut ties with him because he is a legal liability, and TNA come along and be like, "Hey buddy, you want to come along? You want to wrestle? You want to wrestle? You want to do some wrestling?" And Kurt's like, "I do, but I can't." But then they're like, "You want to wrestle?"
Yeah, you only have to wrestle like once a month. And he's like,
We can at least sit here, 18 years after this happened, and tell you it more or less worked out okay.
But it was a hell of a risk.
It was. And one maybe they didn't, and maybe one that was irresponsible of them to take. I think even more on, like, Jeff Hardy was a thing where, like, he might show up a little fucked up, or he might no show, but, like, wrestling was not, like, a fundamental risk to Jeff Hardy's life. Whereas it really feels like at this point in Kurt Angle's life and career, him still wrestling was a fundamental risk to his life. So the idea of you enabling him to continue to wrestle was potentially, like, negligent about this man's life. Not just, will he show up for the show, or will he be able to deliver on the level that you would hope a Kurt Angle or Jeff Hardy would be able to deliver. It's like, you might kill him by doing this.
Yeah.
So, like, that being, like, the thought and the concern, entirely fair, but it more or less worked out.
Yeah. So, good work.
Kurt seems to be in an okay place these days. You never know in, like, the private life. There was the thing when Scott Hall passed away where, like, there was the story a few months later that, like, no one wanted to say that he relapsed, but it turned out he had relapsed.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things where you never know, but it seems like he's doing well for himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kurt Angle. He's in TNA now, so we'll be talking about him for a while.
I'm very excited to at least watch Kurt Angle.